I think our country were kind of good at responding fast to the virus. So like they took precautions early, earlier than other countries did.
Gustav Bak Grosen and Mathias Hansen were exchange students at Hersey and Fremd when the schools were shut down due to the rise of the coronavirus in March.
I was kind of sad, but I also saw it kind of coming with like all the other schools closing around in the areas and the districts and stuff. But I was mostly worried about being sent home.
I was kind of surprised in the first place, but like I kind of knew it was going to happen. Like I saw the spikes in cases in America, but definitely weren't expecting that I would be be on my way home within 2 weeks after the school got shut down.
When COVID-19 hit the States in March, they were separated from their families who were across the world in Denmark and Norway.
The environment with like my family and stuff was my mom was not that worried because she knew that I could like take care of myself.
I was texting with my parents back in March. I think I called my parents maybe 4 times during those 2 weeks. But yeah, I texted a lot with them just to like let them know what I received from AFS because they weren't hearing anything from them. Like the same with my host family. It was only me that received emails about news about the virus and the possibility of us being sent home.
The only thing she was worried about was getting me home safely because there was a lot of flight canceling and a lot of other stuff going around, and like there like suddenly this flight was canceled, and just like getting me home safely was the only thing she was kind of worried about.
As a result of the school shutting down, Gustav and Matthias didn't get the full experience of what remote learning is like in the States.
E-learning, yeah. No, I didn't experience that actually. I think there was like I got sent home and during spring break, like Friday in the spring break. So I actually didn't experience e-learning at Hersey.
I think the teachers should be like praised because of how they handled it. It's not, oh, sorry. It's not easy to have like this whole plan and then suddenly have to like switch everything up and do digital learning. So I think all teachers should be like praised for how they handle this stuff. I didn't do that much e-learning, but with what I did, it was kind of like we learned what we needed to.
With the uncertainties that COVID-19 could cause, they were sent back home to avoid any complications that could occur.
It was AFS International that returned all students to their home countries. So it wasn't a decision my host family made or my family back home made. Yeah, so it was 100% AFS that took the decision.
It was the Norwegian government that originally decided that we want all foreigners home. Like all, or not all foreigners, but like all Norwegian citizens are out either like traveling or people who are not like staying there, like permanently staying there. So in the beginning, exchange students were kind of like a gray area because they're not traveling, but they're not staying there permanently. So it's like we didn't know what was going to happen with that. So, but eventually the Norwegian government said that like you got to go home, and then AFS eventually like canceled all their programs.
Although the airports and precautions are much different now than they were in March, Gustav and Matthias experienced the environment at the airport firsthand.
I've never seen an airport that empty. There's like no line. I could just walk straight up to the baggage drop. And but what really shook me or like that caught me by surprise was there was no like thermal imaging or like thermal like measuring. There's like you just walk straight on the plane. And during a pandemic, I would at least think they had like the little laser thing like you do to like measure temperament or like measure like the heat coming off your body or like how hot you are. But there's like none of that.
The environment at the airport was, I guess, kind of normal. There weren't a lot of people there. Uh, but yeah, on the flight, I had a whole row of seats by myself. I don't know if it was planned or anything. Like nobody had a seat next to me, or yeah. So I mean, it was weird that there weren't that many people on the plane. Like I've never experienced that before.
Emotions were kind of mixed because I did really want to stay and like experience prom and like all that stuff, but at the same time, it's been such a long time since I saw my family.
I wanted to stay and finish it if that was possible, but obviously I could see that yeah, you guys would probably have e-learning for the rest of the year, and at that time we didn't know what it would be like in late June when I was supposed to go back. So yeah, we thought that it would be best if I returned with AFS, because if I stayed longer than what AFS actually planned for me, I wasn't insured or anything, so I had to pay if I like got sick or anything like that, and I had to pay for the flight ticket back home too. So uh, I wasn't forced to do it, but it was just like the best decision at that time.
Since returning home, Matthias went back to school when he got home in March, but Gustav started in August. However, for both of them, school has been much different than when they had left Chicago.
When I first got home, we started having like e-learning, like remote learning. We did it over Teams, like Microsoft Teams, but the same thing as Zoom. But we started e-learning, and then in like the beginning of May, middle of May, we started with like once or twice a week we'll go to school, and then just like there'll just be seniors at the school that day because we divide it a little bit differently than the US does. So the one day will just be like seniors day, and then next day will be like juniors day, and then we'll have like the focus on the people who are graduating and getting like their permit or like license in what they're doing, like carpenting, or the people who need the focus and need to be at school for like specific tools and stuff. They'll get the most focused, and us who just need our laptop could have like once a day of school.
I'm in high school in person right now. It's like back to normal. Actually, we don't have like there is restrictions, but not it's nothing that we actually feel like we are affected by. Uh, so only when we are taking the buses in the morning, we have to wear masks. That's the only time when we actually have to wear masks, and then when we're in school, it's just normal.
I think in the beginning of June, they started like having everyone at school. Like the whole school went back to school, and then there'll be like, there was like specific rules that you couldn't, you either had to be in like your classroom or outside. There's like no like common areas or like the cafeteria or anything. You can be there. You just had to go either like classroom or like we have like bases. So like media and communication has a base, and then like athletes had their base. So it's like you could stick there, but not anywhere else in the school.
Wearing face masks in public has been a big deal in the States. However, it wasn't as much of a precaution until now in Europe.
We only have to wear masks when we're using public transportation, so like buses, trains, planes. That's basically it. And then obviously we have to remember like the 6 feet apart rule.
We don't have any precaution when it comes to face masks. There's no law saying you have to, but there's like red zones around Norway, which is like the more dangerous zones. Like Oslo is a red zone, for example, and there they recommend that on all public transport you wear a mask. So like I went to visit my friend who lived like not that far outside Oslo, and I like wore a face mask and on the train and stuff. And I think the thing about face mask is like it helps if you get sick and if you have the virus. But the thing that it does a lot that I felt is mentally, like you're really cautious about touching your face, which is how like it spreads. So I think that I don't think they should put a law on it here because it's not that big, or it's not, the virus is not that big here. compared to the US. We're a lot smaller country, so I get that the US has to put laws on it.
Their countries had responded early, which has allowed the state of the country to be somewhat normal and has kept the number of COVID-19 cases to be low.
In the beginning, it was kind of like there's a virus going around, and they were pretty honest that we don't know much about it. It's a new virus. We've never heard of it.
Denmark were ahead of America in taking precautions for the disease. Like as I said before, we shut that. Like our country got shut down 2 weeks before America. Like our school were shut down. And yeah, and already back in January and February, they made the rule that we have to stay 6 feet apart in like a grocery store or in any type of store, and also when we were walking in the public areas.
There's come a little wave at the moment with COVID, like especially with going back to school in August, and a lot of there's been some parties that shouldn't have been there, and like there's it's a little wave at the moment with infection, but we are taking, like at school, we wipe down every surface after we're done with the classroom, and we do all that like precautionary stuff.
State of Denmark right now is that the number of cases are increasing a lot, but not in a worrying way, I guess you can say. Like right now they have increased the maximum of people gathered together to, or decreased it to 50. Like before it was 100 people, but now it's 50, and they are starting to send kids back to do e-learning, like in those areas where it's actually a problem. And yeah, and then we have to stay 6 feet apart from each other and wear masks when we're using public transportations. But yeah, that's basically it.
Since they got the virus in control early on, they have been able to travel throughout Europe pretty normally, but with the caution to the red zone countries.
If we travel to a orange country, so we have like a map in Europe where like the orange countries are the dangerous countries to go to, and then the yellow countries are I guess less dangerous to go to. But like if I went to let's say Spain, I think that's a yellow country right now, I would have to be in quarantine for 14 days when I get back. But like I could drive to Germany and then go back, and I wouldn't have to be self-quarantined.
So if you were to go to those red countries, you'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So when in the beginning, where the countries would open and they would be like green and safe to travel to, they could be turned red any moment. So you could go to Spain, but then they could turn red, and then you'll have to go home and have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine, and that's mandatory quarantine.
So I personally traveled with a train, and I had to wear masks throughout the whole train ride. And then when I arrived, I think you have to give your personal information everywhere you're staying longer than 15 minutes. And you have to wear masks in public places.
Traveling during the coronavirus was a little bit, it was not that much different because we have kind of like gotten over the big hit at that point with like the beginning, and this was like in July where things were like starting to settle down. So we didn't have to do much really. We took the boat from Norway to Denmark, and it was like kind of like a normal vacation.
Anneken LeBouar was here during the 2018-2019 school year, so she wasn't in the same situations that Gustav and Mathias had experienced. However, unlike those two, her parents work in the medical field and was able to provide an insight on what the hospitals were like in Germany at the start of COVID and now.
I think in the hospital, usually you have to wear masks if you're operating or something, or if you're in surgery, but now you're wearing masks everywhere, and if you're in at a station where it's risky or it's a COVID station, you have to wear full-on full on everything. So you have to wear this, how do you call it? A lab
A coat?
or a coat, like a medical coat, and you have to wear protection with gloves and masks and also glasses and something for your head.
During their summer break, they had plenty of things that they could do, but with Europe being known for its nature, they took full advantage of it.
The things that they're like, when it comes to the risk factors of doing stuff, there's not a lot of things that are shut down here, especially in summer. Like you could go to like the most like tourist attractions. I think in July, like theme parks opened, and yeah, there weren't a lot of restrictions during the summer. A lot of people, like the government, like encouraged people to travel within Norway, because Norway has a really beautiful nature, and like they encourage people to like go up to the mountains and go hiking and go to the beaches and the coastline, and like so a lot of people traveled within Norway, so there weren't a lot of restrictions for them.
Like the beaches were still open and were open during the summer, but festivals, amusement parks, and all that kind of stuff were shut down.
I've always had to be reasonable about things and choices I made during summer break, especially when I was with other people, and how many people, and maybe also looking at the distance. But otherwise, I mean, I'm able to go out whenever I want to. I don't have a curfew here, unless I think in other states there are curfews, but here, I mean, other states in like the European Union, there in other countries there are curfews, but not in Germany. So I can go outside whenever I want, and I have I'm so lucky to live next to the nature, or very close to the nature, so I could go out whenever I wanted to, and it wasn't very risky.
It's without a doubt that COVID-19 has affected every country economically, but it's the initial response that matters the most.
I think one thing which they did very well was to call on people's responsibility, and reminding people that even if that firstly wearing masks is to protect themselves, and secondly to protect others, especially maybe if they don't really care about others, at least to protect their loved ones. And just we didn't have any curfews, or we weren't forced to do certain things which were forced in other countries. So I think this was a very good thing, how quickly Germany reacted and how responsible they were, and how they took the virus very serious, and also they didn't really, at least from what I heard and from what I read, they firstly tried to react to the virus instead of looking or searching for who was guilty.
I think the good thing about this, or like that Norway did really well, is that they opened quick, but with like precautions, like the little screens in front of the cash registers of places, and like they put up 1 meter lines everywhere, so you'll stay 1 meter apart. And it's kind of like a joint effort. We in Norway are kind of like a team, sort of. It's like everyone's working together. It's like a joint effort, and so like everyone feel like they can contribute, because just like staying 1 meter away could potentially save someone's lives. So I think what Norway really bring that spirit, and like I think the government did a really good job with like bringing the Norwegian people together.
Obviously, since we pay a lot in taxes, we've been able to help those businesses that had to shut down during the pandemics, during the top of like the cases and all that, and the danger of the pandemic here in my country. So yeah, I don't know if we could have done it in any other way or in a better way, but I feel like we did a good job at responding to COVID.
While COVID-19 has hit all countries hard in 2020, there remains uncertainty on what 2021 will look like.
I think it'll be pretty much back to normal, or there'll be a new normal with like, especially with like sporting events maybe, and those kind of precautionary things, because I don't think this will go away that easily. But if and when it does, I think that it'll be kind of back to normal. But I think like people will be a lot more aware of like washing their hands.
There's a few businesses that had it's probably going to take a few years for them to fully recover from the pandemic, but I feel like within a year everything is going to be back to normal, to be honest. Hopefully we'll be back to normal within a year.
I think the whole digitalization will maybe move a little faster, and I think that a lot of people will work from home office more often than they used to.
In 2021, I think I'm still going to be going to school. Like maybe there will be a few weeks where I have to do e-learning, but like as it is of right now, it looks normal. Normal like in person, but still with some safety guidelines and a few restrictions to like how we can walk around campus at school.
Think like school-wise that things will be pretty back to normal. Like I think they'll still continue with like sanitizing the surfaces after we're done with the classroom, but everything else is back to normal now when it comes to school. You can use the cafeteria, you could use whatever. They recommend that you stay with like your class or like at least your like study path, like you're sticking your base, but you don't have to. There's not a lot of restrictions when it comes to school.
I feel like at least in our school now everybody, as I already told you, everybody moves a little quicker and faster with the digitalization, and I think that the school is trying to invest in technical equipment and try to modernize the whole classrooms.
With COVID-19 being the first pandemic a majority of the population has faced, there were successes countries had in response, but also setbacks that could have prevented further damage the virus has caused.
I think a flop would be that that recently, like 4 weeks ago, it was mandatory that we had to wear masks in public transport. I feel like we could have done that way before to lower the cases of the disease here in my country.
The flop is there was like I said earlier, with like maybe in like the bigger cities on public transport, mandatory face masks.
I feel like that's a very hard question to answer, especially since this is such a unique situation where nobody really knew what to do at the beginning. So everybody had to try to work out things. So I don't feel comfortable to say what Germany did wrong or what they did right. Or do you know how I mean it? Because I don't think that it's super easy to live during a pandemic for the first time and do everything right. I think that's very hard, and I think that everybody is making mistakes, and the most important thing is to learn from these mistakes, to not repeat them.